Hello and welcome to episode 84 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Suzie. I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to remind you that the next free Akashic Records workshop is coming up very soon. I would love to see you all there. It's a great opportunity to come and meet me, ask me questions, ask me anything about the Akashic Records that's on your mind. Maybe you're hearing different perspectives, different narratives, and you want to hear what mine are. Definitely get registered for that. If you're unable to attend that workshop live, please don't worry. If you're registered, you'll receive access to the replay to watch in your own time. Today, I want to talk a little bit more in depth about this mass awakening period that you'll have heard me reference before that we are currently in, and specifically in respect of which timeline and timelines potentially are you aligning to in your daily life? What are you consciously co-creating in your daily life? Because I think sometimes what can happen on the spiritual journey is we'll hear about these different timelines. We'll hear about this evolution of Earth. We'll hear about the evolution of the soul. But we don't really know how to apply that theory and that understanding into everyday life. And I want to get into that today. So before I get started in answering or discussing the questions that I've just mentioned, this idea of there being timeline splitting or multiple timelines or one stream of consciousness going in one direction and another stream of consciousness going in another direction exists across traditions. Okay, so in all of the esoteric traditions, there's this idea that we go through cycles. As humans, we go through cycles, and Earth herself goes through cycles. And this is where cosmology becomes very important. So it would have been, if you entered a mystery tradition, that the very first thing that you would have studied would be the cosmology of that mystery tradition. And cosmology is an understanding of these cycles, an understanding of the evolutionary process of Earth and of humans who are part of Earth and part of that evolutionary process. So that would be where you would start. And different traditions have different cosmologies, but they are all designed to discuss this process and explain this process. And all of them are right and all of them are wrong. Okay, in the respect that they are just one way of looking at this process. And also each other cosmology is just as valid as that one. You will see this referred to in the yogic traditions as yugas. You'll see it in Anthroposophy as epochs. You'll see it in the New Age as this idea of this 3D, 5D split. Okay, but it exists across all different traditions. Now, a lot of people on their spiritual journey, when they're coming to it, do not have a cosmology. And I would definitely recommend, if you are new to your spiritual journey, or maybe you've been on your spiritual journey for a while, but you're thinking, I haven't got a cosmology, I would definitely recommend finding one that you resonate with and working with it, because it's going to help you then understand where we are going. So not only understanding where we have been as humanity, but also where we are going. Okay, and if you'd like me to cover a couple of cosmologies in the podcast, then just leave me a note in the comments to the podcast and I'll happily do that. So Earth is evolving. We are going through a mass awakening period, and that means that a lot of people are starting their spiritual journey, which is amazing. And this is in alignment with Earth evolving. You as a human being in this incarnation are part of Earth. And as she evolves, so do we as humans. We all receive evolutionary impulses from not only our soul, our higher self, higher beings, source consciousness, but we also receive them from Earth. Those of you who are grid workers will definitely feel the shifts that are happening on Earth and within Earth herself. She's evolving, she's changing, so are we. And we act as conduits, as I've talked about before, of receiving these higher impulses in, delivering them to Earth, and also receiving the impulses from Earth and passing them up into higher dimensions. This is the process that I'm referring to when we're talking about the evolution of Earth. Now, the choice that we have as humans, our free will decision is, do we want to consciously evolve with her or not? And this is a process that takes many, many years. Regardless of which tradition you look at, this is not an overnight shift. This is a process, and it does take time for this to happen. I've been around the spiritual conversations and community for a very long time, and I've seen lots of different dates being thrown out across those years. And what I want you to focus on is not what date does this happen, because as I said, it's not an overnight process, but what timeline am I consciously aligning to? What am I consciously co-creating? Okay, how am I living each day? And is this in alignment with the evolutionary stream, so that process that we're going through, or the devolutionary stream? But it's very important to do this from a place of complete love and acceptance of yourself, and not about judgment or beating ourselves up, okay? Because we're living in a very difficult, chaotic, confusing time. And the last thing I want is anyone to get stuck in fear narratives or to sit in position of judgment of themselves. What we want to do is we want to look at this question. Now, I'm going to use the New Age terminology, so 3D, 5D, just because it's probably going to be a terminology that most of you are familiar with. And what we can look at when we look at the higher timelines, where Earth is going, where she is evolving to, and where we as humans are evolving to. Those timelines, because there are definitely more than one, are much more aligned to higher spiritual principles. So principles of love, principles of oneness, principles of kindness, principles of community. And when we look at the third dimensional timeline and where that is going, this is more in alignment to things like fear, things like transhumanism, things like division, things like materialism. So these are how the two timelines present. And what I invite you to do in your daily life, using your free will to make these conscious choices, is ask yourself, what am I aligning to? Which narrative, which energy, which frequency am I aligning to? Am I aligning to and co-creating to that fifth dimensional timeline of love, of oneness, of community, of kindness? Or am I aligning to the third dimensional timeline and the other aspects of this? Now, this is not about avoiding or ignoring anything that is going on in the world, but it's where we can make conscious choices, when we can decide where we want to align to. It's about choosing to do that in a way that helps to keep you in alignment to that evolutionary stream. So I want to give you some practical examples as to how you can use this in your daily life. So number one would be, for example, you go and buy a coffee, okay? Your free will conscious decision is, who do I buy the coffee from? Am I going to buy it from a big name brand that I don't know anything about who the money is going to, how they treat their workers, etc., etc.? Or am I going to go to a local coffee shop that might be a little bit more expensive, but also helps to keep a local family who maybe you know in business? So in that example, what you're doing is you're consciously choosing to connect to community and benefit your community. Another example, if you are someone who is making content for your social media, if you are a business owner, when you're coming to make your content, what narratives are you connecting to? What are you consciously co-creating? We all know, and studies have been done, that social media prefers shock value, it prefers fear, it prefers division, it prefers controversy. Okay, that's going to please the algorithm. But as a business owner and as someone who's putting content out there, your free will conscious choice is, am I going to bow down and create for the algorithm? Or am I going to create from love? Am I going to create from a place of the promotion of oneness, of unity consciousness? Even if less people see it, even if it affects my statistics, okay? So really feeling into, what energy am I putting out there into the world? Another example would be in your daily actions. So We are very programmed and conditioned to put people into boxes. We make lots of micro-judgements when we meet another person. It's just how it is. Now, when you're on your spiritual journey and you're really wanting to focus on this oneness, this interconnectedness, this interbeing, it can be really helpful to recognize the programming conditioning that we have and also then try to approach every single person that we meet in our daily life as what Ram Dass would call God in drag. So Ram Dass would talk about every time he would meet somebody, he would see his own guru in the eyes of that person, and he would always try to understand in these difficult situations that every other person that you come into contact with is you. We are all individual sparks. We are all individuated fractals of source consciousness. So can you, first of all, see the program and the micro-judgment and all of that stuff that you're going through when you meet somebody new, and then drop all of that and just try to see them as part of source consciousness. Because if you can, you're going to start approaching people and situations with a lot more love, a lot more tolerance, a lot more patience, and a lot more kindness, which again is going to help you align to that fifth dimensional or evolutionary timeline. The choice is always about, am I going to keep my heart open regardless of what's going on in the external, regardless of what's going on around me? Or am I going to close off? Am I going to contract? Am I going to shut myself down? And this is the conscious choice that we're making. And the more that you can do this and focus on this and consciously keep your heart open throughout your day, regardless of what's going on, and think to yourself consciously, okay, these actions that I'm taking, which timeline are they more into alignment to? The more you're going to feel into that evolutionary impulse that is running through everything at this time. So I offer the self-reflection practice of observing yourself throughout your day and really taking a minute, taking a breath to consciously decide what it is. What actions am I going to take? What are they in alignment to? What am I consuming? The content that I'm consuming, the books that I'm reading, are they promoting and focusing on this fifth dimensional timeline, or is it promoting fear and division? Really feel into that for yourselves, because you do want to be aligned during this mass awakening period to this evolutionary impulse, so that even though there are big changes and things going on, that you can feel safe within the change. As humans, we're not very good with change. We find it a little bit uncomfortable. Our ego really doesn't like change. So getting comfortable with that and understanding this evolutionary impulse is really going to help you navigate your way through this mass awakening period. So I hope you found this episode helpful. I hope it's given you some food for thought, and I shall see you next week for the next episode.